Hello everyone! Welcome! So while I was going over all the various wild updates that have been popping up recently, I've kind of realized something. We never really had, especially in a modern game, a proper fully underground map. And when I mean fully, I mean not like a volcanic area where it's like half of it's above ground, half of it's under, and or like a tundra area that's like has a lot of cave systems in it. That could be up to like 50%. I'm talking about like a fully underground, hundreds of feet down, no sunlight, entire map area that you can run around and hunt monsters in. And yeah, especially in a modern setting in recent games, we haven't really had a area like that. So why not make a video talking about like a conceptual idea of how that area may be set up, what monsters may pop up in it, and so on. So yeah, just a casual brainstorming video. Just have fun with some ideas and go along with it. And hopefully you all enjoy the video. And of course, let's just get right into it. And for what this theoretical area may look like in its overall layout, I've gone for a 3-tier system where each tier goes deeper and deeper and deeper into the earth. And to properly show and illustrate this, I present to you Shitty Map. Starting off with the first part of the map, and the part of the map that people will start in once they enter the area, we have basically an interconnected series of tunnel systems and caverns and like areas that water has just eroded away over time, and are basically almost maze-like, where there's a bunch of interconnected tunnels and cavern systems, and it feels, again, it's not technically a maze because you have a mini-map, but thematically it's maze-like, and there is mostly just bare rock. There's very little vegetation. There's some water going through, water pouring down from the top of the caverns further down deeper into it. But mostly there's not really that much water. There's like a pond, small pond here and there maybe. But besides that, it's mostly just dead, dry rock. And again, mostly maze-like, so there's a lot of room for monsters to hide in and like den in the various corridors and rooms. And thematically could be a very interesting start to the whole area. Moving deeper into the cave, we now have a giant, and I mean absolutely massive, cavern area that is basically like a tropical wet fungus rainforest kind of idea for the environment, where it's just fungi everywhere and there's just giant ponds everywhere from water either coming from above, from the higher parts of the cavern, or from underground water sources that pour through the walls, and the floor is actually covered in fungi and like moss, and there's just humidity everywhere to the point where it actually kind of rains underneath there, so it has its own technical like weather system, sort of, and it's like split up by either these massive pools of water that are of course not deep enough to actually water combat, but deep as in like they're massive, they're covered large area, and this massive rock outcrop in the middle that splits up the whole area. And this entire cavern room is so massive, it has like several zones that within it. So like like the far left side is a zone, the far right side is a zone, and there's 2 zones at top and middle. It's absolutely massive, and could be very interesting having a giant underground ecosystem where you have like giant vines or like giant fungi or rock outcrops that could provide ledges for flying monsters, like could reasonably actually support like decently large monsters, like the vines are that big or the rock outcroppings are actually big enough to support them. And it's basically a giant underground fungus rainforest essentially, which is a interesting gimmick to make this area actually unique. And it's just absolutely, again, massive. Like, this is probably like the biggest room ever in Monster Hunter if it was ever actually implemented, which probably won't, but it's fun to theorize and have fun with this, but it's absolutely massive. It's absolutely massive, and I can't understate that. And the rock outcropping goes up and up and up, and is basically just a giant wall in the middle, and again acts as a divider for different areas, and is a good thematic set piece because you have a lot of fungi growing off it, a lot of moss growing off it, and some of the stuff could be bioluminescent, so kind of this really weird feeling just walking into a room and you just see a giant outcropping in the middle just covered in moss that glows blue, red, and other colors as well, so that could be very much interesting. And moving over to the final segment of the entire map, we have basically the deepest and darkest caverns that have been basically eroded over time from water going in and out. And while the wakes above, not really wakes, but more like the water areas in like the main cavern room are like more marshy than like and swampy, more than proper lakes and ponds. There is a lot of water sources in the very bottom of the cavern system, but these are proper underground lakes. And the only light that really is produced down here is from the glowing fungus or the algae that glows in the water itself. So it's very interesting to go into like this almost ethereal area when you walk down, where the walls, despite being mostly like wet rock, glow very brightly, and the water is just like a sea of like glowing swirly particles and like several different colors, the various blues and greens, and it's almost like an ethereal look to the whole area. And this like very gloomy and dark area is again a very gloomy and dark area, so it's hard to see in some areas, and just a very terrifying area because again you can barely see in some areas, and you don't know what's working down there, so that's always terrifying. And it could be very interesting to have like this very ethereal, like weird area after going to the more lively and alive middle area where it's like a humid wet rainforest, and then you go down and then it's like this gloomy, like ethereal, like underground wake area, which is absolutely terrifying because you know there's some weird stuff that can go down there, and it just contrasts very well, I believe, with the areas above, where you have the topmost area, which is like this dryish area. Then you have the middle area that's mostly fungus and very marshy. Then at the very bottom, you have these giant underground lakes, which can very contrast very well and make the areas within the entire map very distinct. Starting off with what monsters may actually pop up in this area, Casper isn't actually that bad of an idea at first glance, because you know he's a beaver, so instead of chewing down trees for a dam or anything like that, we can have him chew down giant fungi trees or giant fungus growths and all that stuff. And during a fight, he could possibly use those as weapons and try and beat you to death with them, and those can do poison damage, which will be very flavorful and interesting for the area. However, given that Tencent owns this man's spine, we can't really do that. But do you want to know something that Tencent doesn't own with an iron fist? Moles! It's only a matter of time. But yeah, having a mole monster within an underground biome like this could be really thematic and interesting, especially with it like wandering around, trying to eat hornitors, bonabra, or any other insects it can find. And having to be blind so you can't flashbang it could be also very interesting for a fight, especially for a starter S monster where it's not going to be that tough, but it has a nice little gimmick where you can't flashbang it because it can't see, it just smells you, so that could be really interesting for a fight, like an early game fight. And overall, I just think the mole like concept has a lot of stuff behind it that can make it really interesting, and I really do hope one day they actually do make a mole monster and make it at least somewhat interesting. And besides all the smaller insect monsters you may expect underground, like hornitors, conchus, bonabra, hermitors and cyanotors may be pretty common as well, especially around the watery areas. Since their adult forms dig quite a lot, so it's probably expected that they'll probably be underground a good portion of the time. And it'll be natural for them to kind of converge on cavern areas where there's food. It's also pretty easy to believe that their cell can be easily added, especially having a web at the start of the cave system to try and snare anything that may try and come in. Malfestio, or like a underground variant of him, could easily be added to the giant middle cavern just so he just watches over the entire area, either from a vine, a giant fungi that he's able to actually latch onto, or even just a giant rock outcropping in the middle, just to watch over his entire little realm, and if you try and enter the giant cavern from any direction, he can just mug you. I wouldn't even be surprised if they adapt that giant Leviathan leech creature from Frontier and just bring him over to a mainline game and have him just wander around underground and just snatch up anything that gets too close to his favorite little pool of water. Hezu and Gigginox are, of course, obvious choices for an area like this, and while preferentially I would like to have both of them in the same game, and in this underground area, because honestly they don't really compete that badly with each other, because poison, the lightning, and paralysis. If I had to choose, I would preferentially go for Gigginox, because a lot of third generation monsters already got updates and Rise, the Bear Trio, Woodruff and Kezu also got an update in Rise, so it'd be kind of nice if we got a modern touch-up handed over to Gigginox, because I think his design is really cool, and if it just had a proper little touch-up, it can do wonders, because that Gecko, Cave Wyvern, False Head design, that's also poisonous, is just a really cool design, and again, I just feel like if it just got proper touch-up, and it was introduced again in a proper underground area, it can do wonders. Another 3rd generation monster that can actually bring some inspiration for some possible newer stuff they could add, we have Gobel. Now of course Gobel himself is so wrapped up and tangled in water combat that he'll probably never escape it and can never really be usable outside of it unless they do some pretty serious changes. However, we can still take that Angler kind of concept and basically do the Radabon treatment where you have Ergon and Radabon, and we can basically just do a separate, distinct, but still similar creature to Gobel to keep that Angler aesthetic and basically keep him in the very bottom of the cavern area in the deepest, darkest parts in those giant underground wake areas. And basically still keep that kind of theme of an Angler just waiting for some poor fool to follow the word down into the depths to be devoured. That kind of concept I feel like can go really well with like a deep cave Leviathan, and I feel like Gobel is like the perfect base of like having that be done, even if it means just making a distinct species that just has better legs that can actually waddle on land enough to actually be a half decent land fight. So he has a lot of potential, and I feel like it's just, you have to get through the Gobel part to actually make something really unique, but if you do, I feel like there's a lot of potential. Another monster that can provide some inspiration, similar to Gobel, we have Pawumu. Now of course Pawumu is linked heavily with the Coral Highlands, and he has no real place underground as far as I know, so even though he's a bat, there's no real, we're not going to be lazy here and just say, oh he's a bat, put him in. We're going to try and do something a little special with him and do the Radabon Ergan situation where we'll make a distinct but similar-ish species that can be linked to him, and we could make, for example, like a giant, hunched over carnivorous bat creature that works at the very bottom of the caverns, and it's hunched over, almost like Tigrex more than the actual standing posture of most other wyverns like Pawumu. And we haven't really touched the carnivorous aggressive bat species concept in Monster Hunter really. We had a more neutral puffball concept for Pawumu, but a properly aggressive, vicious bat monster at the very bottom of the cave systems could be really interesting because that hasn't really been touched yet. So Pawumu may himself be not great for the area, but his inclusion could make a wink where we could say, oh, a different species evolved differently and giant bat monster that wants to rip your flesh from your bones, goody, that kind of stuff. So I feel like there's some definite possibilities there that can really work really well. It just depends on how it's implemented and how far they want to make it terrifying, because it's gotta be freaky down there, and that thing's gonna be terrifying. Pawumu looks relatively cute, but what I'm kind of visualizing in my head right now is something that's freakishly weird, giant black eyes or obsidian and this disgusting maw teeth, and just having a giant bat monster just fly around the cavern shrieking at you that basically is a sonic boom similar to Tigrex roaring, but it's more precise, so it's more like a railgun, which is funny and hilarious to think about. But I feel like there's a lot of possibilities there, and Pawumu may be the stepping stone to get to that idea. As for Elder Dragons, we actually have a wide selection of stuff available. Of course, there's always new stuff. I'm not going to try and assume or guess what they may make, because, I didn't expect a giant, tar-covered octopus, the Black Flame, so I'm not going to even try to assume, what they'll make or what themes they'll go for, because I didn't expect a giant octopus, honestly, so, but besides that, there's a wide selection of monsters, of Elder Dragon tier that could actually be down there. There's good old Malzeno if you want to go that route, Geismagorm if you want to go that route, or even Shara Ishvalda if you want to go that way. And there's possibly some other stuff you can do with a stretch. Chameleos could be in the giant rainforest marshy area of the map, and Kushawa Tiastra could be somewhere else possibly, but that's a bit of a stretch. there's a lot of possibilities. And I feel like this Elder stuff is kind of wishy-washy anyway, so I don't want to stay on this too long, but there's quite a few Elder Dragons that can pop up, and some of them interesting, some of them not as much, but I'm always hoping we can get some more Elder Dragons that are actually a little more meant for one area, because it kind of feels weird. I always felt a little bit weird about Volcana popping up in literally every area in the game. It kind of feels a little bit weird, but yeah, it just kind of feels a little bit weird, so I'm definitely looking forward to what other weird stuff they may pop up in the future, and hopefully it's some really unique stuff. But that wraps up our little brainstorming session. Now, of course, I don't know anything about game design. This is just a not serious thing whatsoever, and just like, I wanted to just make a little concept for a underground area that could actually fit within a Monster Hunter game, and had a lot of fun. I hope you all have a lot of fun as well watching the video. Now, of course, like, comment, subscribe if you liked the video, and there's Discord and Twitch below if you want to go there, though Twitch is a little bit weird right now because currently for some reason the Halloween spirits have infested my Ethernet cable and I'm still trying to exorcise them, so it's weird, but I'm getting it fixed. So yeah, but again, hopefully everyone enjoyed the video. I appreciate everyone stopping by, and see y'all guys next time wherever that may be. Good night everyone, ciao.